I chose Jacob Riis as my photographer to focus on due to his prominence during urban reform in America. Jacob Riis was born in Denmark on May 3, 1849, and migrated to the United States in 1870. With a fresh perspective from across the ocean and a new home in New York City, Riis was known as a muckraking journalist as his photographs sought to expose inequities in city environments. While living in New York, Riis experienced poverty and became a police reporter writing about the quality of life in the slums. He attempted to alleviate the bad living conditions of poor people by exposing their living conditions to the middle and upper classes. I will be discussing two prominent pieces of his artwork and delving into their significance to myself and larger society. This first image, titled Playground and Poverty Gap, taken in 1908, details what became of a run-down tenement called Poverty Gap, home to one of New York's first mixed-race neighborhoods, also home to notable violence and crime, which was at its peak in 1899. Jacob revisited the area almost a decade later and found one of the city's first public playgrounds in its place. It was referred to as the Holy Terror Park to harbor what it was and not what it is. The image depicts a circle of children, presumably skipping around in a circle enjoying their time. They are the focus of this image, standing out against the setting they are in. Compositionally, they are in the upper left portion of the image, letting the viewer draw their eyes into them from the ground. This work is currently presented over many mediums, specifically in galleries alongside other pieces of Jacob Riis' work. I discovered this work in a gallery of Jacob's pieces presented at the International Center of Photography. There is significance in each of Riis' images, but it is most powerful when presented collectively, as they all detail the experience of lower-class city residents. It is important to understand and interpret the significance of Jacob's work. This photograph is significant to the field of photography because it serves as an exposure piece. Jacob Riis shoots pictures with intention behind them and sets a precedent for using photography as a means of conveying a message about society and to spur change. In his book authored How the Other Half Lives, Riis exposed the poor conditions of tenement living in New York City, specifically regarding low-income immigrant families. This photograph can be considered descriptive, but more so falls into the ethically evaluative category, as it exemplifies the lives of city living in the early 20th century. What makes this piece stand out is what it seeks to convey. The title, Playground and Poverty Gap, is a stark contrast within itself. Playgrounds can be associated with happiness and playful natures, but the fact that it takes place in a run-down tenement area named Poverty Gap screams the opposite. The image has a way of instilling hope considering the revamping of an old tenement lot to become a playground, but does not let the audience forget where these children are. They are still living in an underdeveloped area of the city that receives no attention and maintenance. It is a beautifully chilling image. There is something beautiful yet unsettling about the circle of children in bright clothes against a dark, dirty background. This second image, titled Ludlow Street Cellar Dwelling, taken in 1895, details two residents of a tenement apartment building living out of the cellar. This image is a staple in Jacob Riis' career, as it is a testament to the extremely poor living conditions of immigrants in New York City. Riis would travel into the tenements of residents and ask to photograph them in order to expose their poor conditions to the middle and upper class. The image depicts presumably a mother or caregiver and a child living in a dirty tenement apartment, both of their faces blurred. There are stains on the walls and mess on the floor, with dishes piled in the tiny kitchen area. I also discovered this image from a gallery of Jacob Riis on the International Center of Photography website. I also recognize this image from textbooks I've read in history class back in high school. Jacob Riis' work is admired for its photographic and historical value. Much like the last, this photograph is significant to the field of photography because it also serves as an exposure piece. Jacob championed the idea of flash and casual photography. Flash was needed in many of these dimly lit tenements. You will note that many of his photographs are of everyday people and places, oftentimes exposing unappealing and undesirable environments. Riis showed others that for photographs to be received by the public, they do not always have to capture beauty or be framed images. They can be used to show the lesser-known and scary parts of society that exist around us. That is why this photograph is also considered an ethically evaluative photograph due to the points it makes about the treatment of lower-class immigrants in New York City. This photograph has many elements that make it a unique approach. One thing that stands out specifically to me is the blurred faces of the individuals in the cellar. I was unable to discover if there was intention behind this or if the photograph just came out this way, but regardless, the effect is the same. The way the viewer cannot fully make out the faces of the individual gives an almost dehumanizing aspect to them, which is exactly how they are made to feel living in tenement apartments. These people are living in a cellar, furthering the idea that society has deemed these immigrants as unworthy of actual and legitimate living spaces. The room is cluttered, cold, and dark, exemplifying the discomfort they must have been feeling, and the image hopes to reflect even an ounce of that discomfort back onto the viewer. Overall, both of these pieces allow us in the present day to see back into past city landscapes. In many ways we have improved, and in many ways we are still perpetuating the same issues. There continues to be a gap in standards of living between upper middle classes and lower classes, especially in city environments. While there are protection laws and standards against those types of living, many individuals in New York City are without clean water, heat, and air conditioning. Jacob Riis' photos still translate today, which is a sad but important fact to consider as we continue to utilize photography to make change in society.